India was like, it was really like a smack in the face, in a lot of ways. I was there for part of my grad studies. I did my practicum there, um, and yeah, it was so strange. It was like I was working for like a very kind of independently wealthy guy he was calls himself like a heritage activist, right? So this is someone who is very interested in finding ways to preserve, promote, and document the city and country's intangible heritage. So things like, the process of making a specific kind of shoe, or, how this dyeing process works or something, stuff that isn't, because these are practices that are still living, and so it was very strange. So he owned a hotel. He still owns a hotel, and it was fantastically beautiful. It was his family's old mansion in the middle of like a walled in old city, and I would go to work there every day, in this, all this beautiful stuff. And then there would be just out in the city around was where all of these processes were happening and all of these artisans were working. So it's stuff it's happening now, and you can go and see it, which is what I did. I, would go around and see these artists and artisans and document them and see what they were doing. And then we were trying to find ways to promote that, so how do we capture this? Another kind of project that my coworker and my classmate was working on a little bit more than me was kind of, at like when you're in the city looking at, for example, this mosque that's, thousands of years old. How do we tell this story to someone who's just coming in off the street, and we were working with the government to try and get in some like kind of interactive QR code signage. So you could, do that, and then you would get a story. You could hear we had a thing, I forget what it's called now, the bell, the call to prayer, it was like very specific. So you could actually hear that when you would, do that, because it's an experience you're getting around the city all the time. But like, how do we show that to people? So it was strange because I was coming from like a very privileged place, there for my education, working in this beautiful place, and trying to learn about and discover these really gorgeous, beautiful processes. And then kind of going out and seeing where the stuff is being made and who is making it. It was like a disconnect almost, because like, for example, and I think this is on the sheet you saw, one of the people that I worked with closely was a guy who was doing like this metal work, so I go to his house, and it's like in a slum area, and it's smaller than a room. It's like the size of maybe like a walk-in closet, and so it's him and his 3 girls and his wife are all there in this small space, and that's where they live and that's where they work and everything. And he was wonderful. We talked about his process and everything. But I mean, the first part that's a little bit jarring is like, whoa, like we're right here in the like kind of extreme poverty. And then kind of seeing, okay, wait, this is a school day and all your kids are home from school, so they're not in school. They're there and they've got to help out, like run the household and help make stuff, to sell. And which is what I don't know. So it was a difficult process too, because as I'm kind of learning about this stuff too, and again, grain of salt, because I understand that what I did was, just a tiny, tiny sliver. And I obviously don't know, the whole scope of what's happening with everybody. I was just a visitor, right? But, you're seeing these families and these communities, where this stuff is happening. And traditionally, the example I gave was just a man, but traditionally, more often than not, it's women doing this kind of stuff. And it's stuff that we were promoting, and it's a beautiful thing. But in that process of, basically kind of the more successful, a project was, or, the more something would sell, that increases the likelihood that, you know, that girl is not going to go to school then. Hard. It was strange. And yeah, it was just like, it just, in so many other ways too, just a sensory overload and just like a lot, you know.
How long were you there?
I was only there like, what was it, 4 months?
That's a pretty long time, though.